Welcome to the Askem Studios podcast. Join us for a lively discussion about all things I do. This episode is pre-recorded with an audience of our 5 kiddos, a dog who's convinced he's a ring bearer, and a cat who could care less about weddings. Get ready for laughs, loves, and a touch of chaos. Let's dive into this week's episode of the Askem Studios Wedding Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the Askem Studios Wedding Podcast. I'm your host, Todd.
And I'm Kelly, not the co-host.
You are the co-host. I'm the host, you're the co-host.
No. I don't co-anything.
Well,
I lead the way.
You know, when I started this business, I was the owner, and then you got your fingers in the pie, and now you're the co-owner.
And now it's grown because it's gotten so much bigger, and we've expanded, and yep. So I just brought momentum to Askem Studios.
Okay. All right. So today we actually have a pretty interesting topic. And I think it'll be pretty helpful to the couples out there. You know, basically, we're navigating the wedding vendor maze. So basically, it's helpful tips for couples as you're planning, not just for videography, but also, you know, as well as with your other vendors included. So Kelly, I will let you just kind of take it out of the gate. And, you know, you can just kind of give your perspective. Like, what does the normal, like, booking process or inquiry process look like for us?
Okay, so first I just want to, like, side note here. So this is how we know that I'm not a co-host, because you always turn it over to me and be like, okay, you get it started, and then you add the tidbits of information. So that's how we know I'm not the co-host, just saying. Okay, so, but going back to on point, to the maze, and I don't know if that's a fair representation. I don't think it's necessarily a maze, but I mean, obviously when couples are getting married, they are looking at hiring a lot of different vendors to make their day happen, so to speak. So it's definitely a lot. And I think some of the information that you had kind of researched was that as people are looking at different things that they need, whether it be like a venue or photographer, videographer, caterer, you know, just all the things that they may have, like a list of like 5 or 6 of each thing. And so after a while, that's going to add up to a lot of people.
Well, yeah. I mean, you figure on average, you know, from, you know, what I was looking at is like couples typically average around 15 vendors per wedding, give or take. That's just an average across the board. So if you have 5 per category, I mean, you're very quickly looking at like 75 you know, people that you're contacting. And then you've got communications going back and forth with. Obviously, there are going to be some vendors that are going to be more, I would think, in my mind, more like videography, photography, venues, planners. All of those 4 right there is going to be at least 6 or 7, I would assume, you know, just from what we see in the Facebook groups, you know, whenever some unsuspecting fiance or, you know, says, hey, I'm looking for a wedding videographer. And then boom, within 20 minutes, you have literally like 55 responses if you don't have that cutoff filter on there. And sometimes it can grow to a list of like 100, depending on the, you know, we're this is a side note, but we're a member of like a couple different groups. So like Charlotte, you're looking at like 160 quickly, you know, within like a 2-hour span. So,
or like if you go to like one of the wedding websites, like The Knot or, you know, one of those other places, and you know, you go to there or whatever, like there are literally hundreds of vendors that are listed like for each category, and some of those are like, you know, from like local to, you know, national organizations. And so I'm sure that it's got to be so, I can't even imagine trying to plan a wedding nowadays. I just like, I think I remember like when we planned our wedding, like there was some, like I think your cousin had like her photo book like laying out on the table for everybody to like look at from when they got married like a year or so earlier. And I was like, oh, who did you use? And she said this, and I was like, okay, great, let's go with that one. Mm-hmm. And that's how we booked our photographer. Yeah. Like, I didn't even know that was like, you were supposed to look for other people. I just was like, oh, that's a good price point. They do good work. Let's go with that. But like now it really is such a, and it might have been that way then too, but I was just clueless. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the stats that I pulled up, and actually we're kind of jumping ahead now, but like, for Gen Z, 75% are likely to ask friends and family for a referral of who they used for the day of, while the millennials, 71% are likely to ask friends and family. So there are still people within that 30% margin that are looking outside of, just friends and family. And I think that that's kind of where, like, for this purpose, for like what we're trying to do with this episode of the podcast, is just kind of like lay out the groundwork. I know whenever people initially contact us, so typically we'll respond back with an email to try to set up a call, because we realize the importance of being able to hear about your day, also to hear about you guys as a couple, aside from like the service that we offer. We want to make sure that we're hearing just about you, about your personality, what makes you guys unique. Our consultations normally last around 45 minutes to an hour. And that's, so if you have, that's one vendor, so on average, if you're looking at 30 minutes, per vendor, 30 to 45 minutes per vendor, that can definitely add up real quick. And so we're not trying to scare anybody. We're just trying to equip couples as they're planning to make sure that they're being diligent on what they're doing. So
yeah, like I remember we had one bride that kind of reached out, and she's like, hey, like, not trying to not do a call with you or anything, but she's like, before I even get started, I want to make sure that you're even going to be within my budget. And like, and I respect that, 100%, that you're saying, hey, if you're not even close to my budget, there's really no point in having a conversation with you. But if there is, I would encourage you that if there is a company that really, like, you reach out, that you see their work and you're like, wow, this is really speaking to me, and that this is definitely like a vendor that you think you would want, like, don't let that price point kind of like deter you either, because that maybe like where they're starting out doesn't mean that they can't customize something specifically for you. And also like know what's going to be important to you. I think for us, when we first started out, like, we wanted to be there for every little detail of the day. And I think that, I'd say, not that I didn't want to be there, but Todd definitely wanted to be there for every aspect of the day, but he does the editing. So that makes sense to me now. But I think one of the things that we've realized is that, as we've just evolved, that, it's okay if there is an aspect of your day that you don't necessarily want to incorporate into like your highlight film, or or if you're just like, hey, I don't necessarily want to have like, photos of this particular thing or whatnot. But for you to at least say, hey, these are the things that are my priorities, and these are the things that I want to walk away knowing that have been documented and have been captured, so that I can look back on in years to come.
Yeah, and I would say more so for photo than video, because we offer bundled services. We have a little more flexibility, but more so for photo, knowing your shot list, coming up. We normally send a generic one out that gives, a pretty rough, all the important ones or aspects of the day are covered, but, you never know the family dynamics. So there's always, potential to add on or take away from that. But for video, we don't really use a shot list because, we're mirroring photography, whether it's our own services that are bundled or whether it's working alongside another, standalone service that was hired outside of us. We're pretty much mirroring the photographer's timeline from the day of. And there's not much, if anything, that I can think that we're missing, so...
Well, I think the other piece too is like, because obviously we can speak very much to like photo and video, but then there's also like, hey, how important is it that my guests have, like, do I need to look at having like an open bar, or, should we just have, like maybe, wine and beer as an option, or like, do I need to have multiple choices of, different foods for my guest and things like that. So,
or gluten-free. Do you need gluten-free for special diets? That kind of stuff.
So like all of those things, kind of have to go into play. So when you're kind of looking at, your options, it's okay to say, hey, I'm not going to go into like that much detail. It was like today, we had, I'm our daughter is graduating from high school, and so never in a million years would I think that like high school kids would want like lettuce and tomato and stuff on their burgers. I just did not think that would be a big thing for them, but it really is. And they got so excited about having just like that little tidbit. And so like that was something we were able to do. But, you know, you have to consider like when you're planning things out, like what's important and, you know, and for you. And there's nothing wrong with saying, yeah, this isn't important to me, and your guests are there to celebrate you and you know, your love and your celebration, and they're going to be happy just to be a part of it. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to meet their expectations. It has to meet yours.
Well, I think as we're adding the different condiments to the burger of your wedding day here, you know,
Oh my gosh, that was so cheesy.
I know, you know me, that's Mr. Cheese. So, but anyways, you know, I think when you're adding those different elements to your day, like, you know, like Kelly had mentioned about, you know, basically when you're reaching out to family and friends in that aspect, you know, what vendors they used. You know, if you're averaging around, you know, 10 to 15 vendors for your wedding, I think there's the importance of making sure that you're still not getting, number one, overloaded with your email address. I think it's good that a lot of couples do set up that couple email address for their wedding, like just specifically for weddings, because of the volume that we already spoke about. I think that helps to eliminate, you know, like it getting lost in the mix. But I think that the urgency of checking your emails, not urgency, the diligence of checking your emails, because if you're reaching out to 5 or 6 vendors per category, it's very overwhelming very quick. I mean, you're going to get a lot of responses back. I know for us, when a couple reaches out and they inquire about our services, we normally respond back, you know, in a 24-hour time period, 12 to 24-hour time period, if not sooner, because I'm like on top of my email. But after that, we try to schedule our consults. So we try to find a suitable time that works where we can carve out about 30 to an hour of your time. That way we can learn more about you guys, and we can learn more, and you can as well learn about us. And so from that, you know, then there's the waiting period, you know, and typically I'll try to wait, you know, 5 to 7 days before I try to follow up, you know, but in that process, how many of those other vendors have you reached out to, and now all of a sudden it's getting buried and suppressed? So I don't know that it's a matter of ghosting per se, and a lot of vendors kind of feel that way because we tend to think one-dimensionally and we don't factor in, at least I do, and I tend to feel like, oh, they ghosted me, you know, but like realistically, when you look at the data, you know, and you look at all that, you know, there's a lot of back and forth that's going, you know, out, or, you know, from you and from the vendors. And so I think it's important not to lose your sanity in that time frame, and make sure you're carving out time for your guys as well, because planning a wedding is not an easy task. Even with a planner, like you still have you still have other family members that are involved in the planning process too. Normally the mother of the family is involved in the process, and you know, so I think that making sure that you're allowing time for you guys to be able to just enjoy your lives too, as you're leading up to the biggest moment of your life, you know, to that date is important. I think that, you know, like Kelly, like if you can just kind of maybe just give a little bit of insight, like on just like your overall thoughts on like the booking process, like at least the inquiry process.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime, I mean, I can only speak for me, like personally, like I always appreciate that, like if I'm looking to have somebody, if I'm looking to make the investment and have someone like maybe do like our family photos or you know, that kind of thing, like I'm definitely looking for like a personal touch. So like whenever I get like those kind of like uniform responses back, like I'm always just like, okay, it's just an automated process. And so like for me, that's a little bit of a turn off. I mean, it may not be for other people, but I think that's an opportunity for, you know, for vendors to look at, and for, for brides to look at as well, is that, like, you know, are they providing a more personal touch? I'm also I really appreciate it, like when someone kind of gives me an idea of how much they cost, because I'm not someone that wants to waste, my time or their time. If they're charging, like if I was looking to like, we were looking for, places to have like our daughter's like sweet 16. So I was just looking at things, and there were ones that were like, $5,000 and $6,000. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to invest that much, into a sweet 16 party. Like that's not where we're at. But like, so I just like to know those things kind of going into it. Or if I'm, planning to purchase a cake for something or whatever, like I kind of just want to have an idea of what we're looking at. And, I like to, I want to see their product, too, but I also want to know like, hey, is this, is what they value, is what they value in themselves the same as what I value in them? Because not to say that they're wrong for how much they're charging, but I may not feel the same way. Like, I think as people, we all look at things differently. And I know a lot of times, like on Facebook, like, we're part of groups, and I'll see brides that I'll reach out and be like, I'm looking for, a budget conscious, vendor. And
one that doesn't cost an arm and a leg, or using the terminology cheap. And while the language, isn't meant to be hurtful or disrespectful, it does, for some vendors, I know that it does turn them off to even, trying to be of assistance by any means. Just because we all do put value, the same way that you guys value your time, whenever you're reaching out, we also value, our time that it takes to follow up with, to do the calls, to do the follow-ups, and to do the contracts, to do all that. I mean, and that's aside from trying to do everything else that we normally are doing within our roles. So I think that maybe I cut you off there. I didn't mean to do that. Okay. But like, I think that being mindful of, okay, this is our budget. It may not be ideal for some. However, this is where we're at. If you're only within this budget, could you please respond to a post with your services? And I think that would help eliminate a lot of that.
Yeah. And I think it's important to recognize that, when you're looking for someone who is like budget conscious, or whatnot, just keep in mind that, there's always that saying, like, you get what you pay for. And so like, while I respect that, you only want to spend so much or whatever, also, understand that there's, that a lot of things that are involved with weddings, do involve like a creative aspect, and they are a skill set. It's something that people have done, whether you're looking at for someone to do like florals, or someone to help, with planning or coordinating. Like, those are things that, like, it's a skill set that someone has developed. And, so just kind of keep that in mind, that while, because I know there are times when I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of money. And I mean, even Todd and I've had like these debates or whatever, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't think I would pay that much money for something. And he was like, well, I totally would. So, even as a couple, we tend to disagree on how much, things should cost, or, whatnot. So I think it's just important to be mindful of that, and to be able to recognize that, it's not that people are trying to gouge anybody, but there is a cost associated with, with doing things, and, you have to determine how much you want to invest in that, kind of thing.
So, I mean, the importance of communication whenever you are reaching out to your vendors and your preferred method, kind of a key thing too. I think that when I was looking at this data, like, just as far as like contact, the ways to be contacted, like, Gen Z, 42% are via text, and millennials, 32% via text. One of the things that we always do is, like, we don't have on our contact form, we don't have a preferred method of, of contact, phone, email, text. It would just be too crazy for like the housekeeping, for the behind the scenes end. And I don't know.
You even said it, you're like, maybe we should add that. And I was like, oh my goodness, I just can't even imagine.
Well, see, this is where I was listening to my co-host, in our private conversations, I was like, you know what? She's probably right. That's probably why I have her on this show. So, so no, but
That's right. You just keep talking, and people will start to see that there is no co-host. There is the leader, and there is the follower. So, but I can't. I just can't even imagine. I mean, if we're talking about like 75 vendors, can you imagine like all of the how would you even keep track of like all of the text messages? Like, I would not be able to keep them all straight. I would totally lose track of all of it. I mean, I know just just for me to keep track of my contacts in my phone, like I have to have like, this school, I have to put like initials at the front of like the contact that I know them from the school. I know them from the church. I know them, from this organization, or like, that's the only way I can keep track of how I know people, because it's so much to keep up with. And I can't imagine doing text.
Yeah,
but,
and I mean, most of our inquiries are coming via email to begin with, because they're filling out the contact form on our website, which automatically sends it to our to the email.
Yeah, I mean, do most vendors use like a contact form, or are they?
Yes, everyone uses a contact form. So, but
do they ask questions about like? I just can't imagine. I mean, and maybe couples get tired of filling out contact forms, but I like knowing a little bit about the person before I like start talking to them, because and I think it's probably especially important for like videography and photography, because we're with them all day long. I mean, you may not, like, your caterer may not may not care so much about like how y'all met and all of that may not be as important to them or whatever, but I would think like the ones that are like, just very personally involved in your day, like your planners and things like that, I just think they would want to know a little bit about you personally. If not, like, why not? I just
well, I don't know. I agree. I think that, it's already bad enough, to try to keep up with the emails. And, so on the flip side of what we were talking about earlier about being diligent, for the couples to check their emails, I think it's also diligent for, we've switched over to where we're both on, trying to get the emails that are coming in, because between the editing, I mean, people have lives. We
switched over to that, because I still don't get any emails. So.
You do. So you just don't. You just have everything else in the sun going on. So this is why I'm like always on top of the emails, because you never see half of them. But there are some. But there are some that come in that you remind me of that. Because with the editing schedule, we have 5 kids. Life is going on.
No, I mean,
and
like,
it's not just for us. But
I don't see like the new inquiries. I see if I reply to an email or I'm copied on an email, like I see those, but I don't see like any of the new ones.
Well, no, the new inquiries are still coming to me, and then from there I forward them on to you. So if you're not getting those, you need to take issue with your co-host that he's not sending you everything that he's supposed to be sending you in a timely manner. So, but you can't fire the co-host, because the co-host, this will be the Kelly show, and I don't know how that's going to work. I don't want to be the camera guy for the Kelly show. So
I think the Kelly show kind of sounds fun, though, doesn't it? And now over to Kelly.
Okay. So, anyways, we just we want to make sure that we're respecting the time of of the vendor as well as the couple, and I would hope it'd be vice versa. The couple want to respect their time, and then ours as well. Just because it is, and this isn't like a negative connotation. I don't mean it that way. I just think that it really just helps, it helps you in the process. I know that
and I think like, so if you've decided not to go with a vendor, if you're like, if you hang up the phone and you're like, oh yeah, that's definitely not one I want to go with. Like, there is nothing wrong with saying, hey, thanks for your time. This is just not that we're just not going to pursue this avenue with you, or, we don't feel a connection, or, whatever. I think on the vendor side of things, that sometimes is harder for us to do, because we don't ever want to offend anybody.
Yeah.
And
I never want to take it personal. If someone doesn't want to book our services, I don't want to take it personal. I do get disappointed, but that's just part of the nature of the beast. I think the thing that the thing that has recently driven me nuts is we had a verbal commitment while waiting on a contract and a deposit. And then all of a sudden, like we were told, like, oh, we decided to go with somebody else. And I was like, wait a minute, you just told us you were booking with us, like, so that's a little, that's not cool. Like, I don't like that. I definitely took that one personally. But overall, like, I mean, we know.
I don't know how you take it personally though.
Well, I took it personal for like 30 minutes and then I let it go. But like for 30 minutes there, I was like, what the heck? I was like, you just told me you were going to book, and I mean, it wasn't like they texted me like 30 minutes later and said, we're not going to book. This was like 3 days later, so it wasn't like it was, so this whole time I'm waiting on the contract and the deposit to get paid. And, under the circumstances, yeah, we're going to book with you. I will get that over to you. And then 3 days later, it's like, oh, we decided to go with somebody else. So, I mean, I guess it is what it is, But I mean, yeah, I did take it personally for about 30 minutes after that. But then
Todd's gonna like try and like stalk the couple and just be like, so who did they end up going with? I just want to see what happened.
Right. So and then I'll be like, you get what you pay for. So
stop it. They probably went with a great company.
I wish them well. And I don't mean any ill will. I'm being I'm sarcastically joking, just for clarification. So, but I think that the other thing to do is, as you're booking if you know you want to go with somebody and you're booking them, make sure like the other end of it. Does the venue have a preferred vendor list, or are they all inclusive to begin with? And knowing those details ahead of time. We had a couple that we went through our consult. We got the contract was sent off. Luckily, they didn't send the deposit, but when they were getting ready to send the contract back, they checked with the venue, and the venue was like, well, we're an all-inclusive venue, and they happened to be in the same category that we are in, the venue owners. So,
Anyway,
the word on the street
that particular venue only worked with certain companies, and we were not one of them. So,
I don't know. I'm being like, way to keep me in line today, Kel.
Gosh, just like something else.
But
Negative Nate over here.
So just
pull them all down.
So just keep that in mind as you're going through the process. So
I think especially when you're picking venues too. I mean, like sometimes it's great to have like that savings and things like that, but if you're one of those people that really want to have the freedom to pick and choose who you work with, just be mindful that the inclusive venues may have limitations on who you can hire outside of, and things like that, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, you have to determine what's a value to you. There's, at least on my part, there's no judgment.
Yeah. There's no judgment on this side either. I mean, I'm really just kind of pointing out, like, if they need a COA or a COI, a copy of insurance. If you need to have like your business license, if the venue is requiring those things, try to find that out ahead of time. A lot of times the venue will already tell you that to begin with, or if they are an all-inclusive and they do allow outside vendors, they'll normally have a process that you have to submit that paperwork to that venue. So, to just double check on those things too, because, some couples may not know that, so I just think that that's something to make sure that you're mindful of. So, but, so Kelly, now that you have successfully kept me
in check
today, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why. I'm like,
It's because your head got so big when you said that you were the host. I think that's what happened.
Yeah,
like, as soon as you had the mindset of, I am the host and Kelly is just here to support me and
supporting cast,
supporting cast,
but you're my helper. That's the way I look at it. I don't look at it as support. I look at it as helper. We're helpmates. We help each other so that we can be better
Do you know
together.
what's really bad? I can't even argue with that because that's what the Bible says.
So. All right, so
I can't even argue with that one.
So hopefully this information was helpful. I know I didn't necessarily hit everything I wanted to go over on this, but I think that we did hit the big topics. And so once again, we're grateful to have the couples that do listen to us and watch us on Spotify, YouTube, and Twitter, or X now that it's commonly named as.
Twitter is called X?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Kelly, you're so out of touch. Yes, it is called X, Kelly. She doesn't so Kelly's on Facebook, but she doesn't have an Instagram. She doesn't have Pinterest. She doesn't have X.
Actually, I do have a Pinterest account, but it's for work.
Right.
So I do have a Pinterest account, but I only use it for work. So if you need any crafts for preschoolers, I have a good recommendation on Pinterest for you, 100%.
So whether you're listening to this the audio format of this podcast, or you're watching the pre-recorded video version of this, we're going to be coming out with these every Friday. Hopefully this gave a pretty good insight into our personalities, because I think we were pretty loose today, which is good. So, I mean, well, unless you assume that I'm negative all the time, and that's not good.
He's not negative. Actually, between the two of us, I think you're more positive.
Right. But, in general, we're grateful for everyone, and we're grateful for just the opportunity that you spent with us today, just to, allow us into your lives for a brief moment. And so, again, Kelly, we're going to land this plane, so...
I don't think I understand that expression either.
Well, we're flying right now. We're high flying, Kelly, and I'm trying to descend, so that this isn't like an hour-long podcast.
Oh, I just want to say one other thing. So if you do have any topics, or if there's any, because I would love to hear from the couples as far as what they would like to hear about from vendors, or just, pro tips and things like that. So if y'all have any questions, we would love to hear from you as well.
Well, also, Kelly Widows, I did not tell you this yet, but we are going to be reaching out to some of our previous couples, and not to talk about the videography side, but to talk about their wedding day experience overall, what it looked like from A to Z. Oh. So we are going to be actually doing that as well.
That's
I have not told you yet. So just like I didn't tell you about the emails that you need to follow up on, I didn't tell you about this part of it. Because as the host, I don't have to tell the co-host what I have lined up coming up. So anyways, we thank you again for joining us, and we're extremely grateful for every one of you. So thank you again, and say bye, Kelly.
Bye, Kelly.